prejudiced manager expels a black girl from the store, unaware that she is the daughter of the new owner. When she discovers the truth, she is left completely speechless. What happens when prejudice turns into a fatal mistake? In a department store in New York, a simple visit transforms into a moment that will change lives forever. Emily, a 15-year-old black girl, enters her father's store without realizing that her skin color would make her a target of discrimination. The manager, Susan, blind to the truth before her, expels her without hesitation, triggering a series of events that will reveal more than just an act of racism, but a profound lesson about power, justice, and reconciliation. Emily has always been a brave and intelligent girl, living in an affluent neighborhood and attending good schools, but she is aware that her skin color still places her in challenging situations. As the daughter of Michael, an African-American businessman who rose from a difficult childhood to success, she is shaped by the love she receives from her family, but also by the reality of a world that often views her with prejudice. When she decides to visit one of her father's stores, Emily does not imagine that she would be treated as an intruder. When she is unjustly accused of loitering, her feelings of insecurity and not belonging intensify. Susan, the store manager, is a woman who has always believed that social status defines a person's worth. Coming from a wealthy family, her limited worldview has led her to create barriers for those who do not fit into her concept of selected clientele. She feels in control, but by expelling Emily, she has no idea that she has made a mistake that could cost her job and reputation. The store environment, which should be a welcoming space, turns into an emotional battlefield where hidden truths begin to emerge. When Michael discovers what happened to his daughter, a dilemma arises. How will he, a man who has fought against racism and inequality, deal with the injustice his daughter has faced? He sees the need not only to confront Susan, but also to change the culture of the store she represents. Michael, who has always sought to create an inclusive and respectful environment, now finds himself in a position that will require not only justice, but also reflection on what it means to be a leader. In this scenario, John, a salesman who witnesses Emily's humiliation, is forced to confront his own beliefs and fears. He has always felt uncomfortable with Susan's attitudes, but now, realizing the gravity of the situation, the pressure to act intensifies. His voice could be the key to exposing the truth and facilitating significant change. As the story unfolds, the characters confront their vulnerabilities and seek to understand the impact of their actions. What began as an act of discrimination transforms into an opportunity for growth and learning. Michael will have to decide the fate of Susan and his own company, while Emily, John, and everyone involved learn lessons about empathy, courage, and the fight against prejudice. The question becomes clear: how far is each person willing to go to stand against injustice? Emily was in a mix of confusion and anger. After being expelled from the store, her heart raced and her mind boiled. How could a simple visit to her father have turned into such a humiliating moment? The idea that someone treated her as an intruder simply because of her skin color felt absurd, yet the reality was cruel. She looked at the store that had, until that moment, been a familiar and safe place, and felt as if she were being expelled from her own home. Meanwhile, Michael, upon hearing his daughter's account, felt a wave of helplessness. He had always strived to educate Emily about the realities of the world, but nothing could prepare her for the pain of discrimination. Anger burned within him, but he knew he needed to act cautiously. An impulsive reaction could lead to a confrontation that would benefit no one. He had to find a balance between protecting his daughter and fighting against injustice. Amid this emotional turmoil, John, the salesman who witnessed the scene, also felt desolate. He had always admired how Michael conducted his business, promoting an inclusive environment. However, Susan's attitude had left him torn. He did not want to put himself in an uncomfortable position, but the memory of Emily's hurt expressi, the responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders. He knew he could be the voice that helps change the situation, but the thought of confronting the manager made him anxious. The next day brought a new challenge. Michael decided he needed to meet with Susan. He wanted to understand her perspective, but also intended to make it clear that what happened would not be tolerated. However, upon arriving at the store, he felt a wave of anxiety. The tension in the air was palpable. Susan greeted him with a defensive expression, as if she were already ready to justify her actions. "I didn't mean to offend your daughter," she began, her voice shaking but firm. I just thought she was, well, she didn't look like a typical customer for the store. Michael took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. You can't make assumptions about someone based on their appearance. Emily deserves as much respect as anyone else who walks in here. What happened was unacceptable. Meanwhile, Emily waited anxiously for her father's return, her heart filled with doubts. She wondered if it would truly be possible to change the mindset of someone like Susan. The idea that her voice could be heard felt like a distant dream. At the same time, a small flame of hope began to grow within her. If her father was fighting for justice, perhaps there was a chance that this could really lead to change. The conversation between Michael and Susan intensified. She tried to justify her actions, but he was not willing to accept empty excuses. His determination was palpable and began to influence John, who was watching from a distance. The salesman felt compelled to approach, his voice hesitant but firm. Susan, you need to understand that what you did was wrong. I saw what happened, and I can't stay silent. John's words echoed in the air, and Susan turned to him, her expression a mix of surprise and indignation. You were there too and said nothing. Why are you turning against me now? The tension was rising, and Michael saw the opportunity to involve John in the conversation. What matters is that we all have a responsibility to stand against injustice. John, you have courage. Use it. Emily, listening from afar, felt a mix of pride and gratitude for her father and the salesman. That moment was becoming something bigger than she had imagined. It was a fight not just for her, but for everyone who had faced discrimination. Michael was showing her that change could happen, even when it seemed impossible. As the conversation continued, each character began to confront their own beliefs and fears. Michael struggled with the pain of seeing his daughter hurt, but was also determined to change the culture that allowed this to happen. Susan, on the other hand, found herself cornered, confronting the reality of her actions and their consequence. John, the witness who could make a difference, fought to find the courage he always knew he had, but had never been tested. The battle was just beginning, and each of them faced challenges that required more than just words. They needed to question their own beliefs, reflect on their actions, and, above all, learn that every small act of courage could be the first step toward a more just world. Emily, Michael, and John's journey was intertwining in unexpected ways, and the fight against prejudice was about to intensify. The conversation between Michael, Susan, and John continued to be filled with tension. Michael felt his heart racing. Every word that left his mouth was an attempt to protect his daughter and simultaneously open Susan's eyes. He knew he needed to be firm, but also understanding. However, Susan's defensiveness was strong, and his frustration grew with each passing moment. The idea that someone could think that a person's appearance could determine their worth left him distressed. Susan, for her part, was beginning to realize that her position was more vulnerable than she had imagined. John's words had struck her, but pride prevented her from admitting she was wrong. She remembered how many times she had made decisions based on stereotypes, and part of her wanted to defend herself, but another part began to question those patterns. Nervously, she fidgeted with her fingers as she tried to find a justification that didn't sound so empty. Emily, at a distance, listened intently. Every word exchange between her father and Susan made her heart ache. She wished her voice could echo in that moment, that she could be heard and tell how the experience had hurt her. But insecurity kept her from speaking up. The fear of being ignored again silenced her, and frustration mounted with each second. The idea of being seen only by the color of her skin was a shadow that followed her. Meanwhile, John struggled with his own demons. He had always been a good salesman, always striving to keep things in order and please everyone. However, the scene he witnessed made him rethink his priorities. He remembered how he had hesitated to act, how inertia had made him feel guilty. He wanted to be part of the solution, but the idea of opposing Susan, his colleague, left him conflicted. He felt torn between loyalty and ethics. The tension in the store escalated, and the atmosphere seemed to concentrate all the emotions present. Realizing that the conversation was not progressing, Michael decided to change his approach. He spoke about his experiences as a father, the conversations he had with Emily, and how he tried to prepare her for the world, but that nothing could have prepared his daughter for the pain of discrimination. His words were laden with emotion, and he hoped that Susan could see the gravity of the situation. When I look at my daughter, I see a future full of possibilities. I want her to know that she is loved and respected no matter what others say. We cannot allow prejudice to define who we are, he said, his tone a mix of sadness and determination. His words deeply moved John. He realized that in his own life, there had been moments when he had remained silent in situations of injustice. Michael's struggle and Emily's pain were encouraging him to find his own voice. With a newfound sense of urgency, he decided that he could no longer stay silent. He took a deep breath and turned to Susan. "You need to understand that what happened was not just an offense to a young woman. It was a reflection of a culture that needs to change, and we all have a role in that." Susan, now completely cornered, felt her heart race. John's words hit her like arrows. She began to see that her actions had consequences, that her words and attitudes were shaping the environment around her. A wave of shame washed over her, and she didn't know how to react. The defensive walls she had built started to crumble. Meanwhile, Emily felt divided. The desire for her voice to be heard struggled against the fear of more rejection. But hearing her father and John take a stand, a wave of courage swept over her. She needed to join them. Determined, she took a deep breath and approached the store, her steps firm. "I am Emily," she said, her voice slightly trembling but full of determination. "I am not an intruder. I am a customer." And what happened was deeply painful. Everyone looked at her, and Michael smiled with pride while Susan appeared paralyzed. It was a turning point. Emily was determined not to be silenced any longer. She wanted everyone to know that discrimination was not just a personal issue, but a collective struggle. And in that moment, she became part of the change she so desperately wanted to see in the world. The journey was just beginning, and each of them faced even greater challenges. But Emily's determination, John's courage, and Michael's fight were starting to carve a path. A new light was rising on the horizon, and the hope for a fairer future was becoming tangible. As Emily spoke, the silence in the store became palpable. Her words, though simple, carried immense weight. Michael felt a wave of pride flood his chest. He had always known his daughter was strong, but in that moment, she was showing more courage than he could have imagined. Emily's determination was not just a defense of herself, it was a call to all those present, an invitation for them to unite against prejudice. Susan, on the other hand, felt as if she were in a maze with no way out. Emily's expression, a mix of pain and courage, penetrated her defenses. The young woman's words forced her to confront her own shortcomings. She remembered how many times, thoughtlessly, she had reinforced stereotypes, how the opinions of others had shaped her worldview. The idea that her actions could have hurt someone hit her hard. Shame enveloped her, making her want to hide. I didn't know," Susan murmured, her voice barely audible. She looked at Emily and her eyes were filled with regret. "I didn't think this could really hurt someone." "It hurts," Emily replied firmly but compassionately. "It's not just a word. It's a feeling. It's like you are not seen for who you really are." The young woman felt a mix of anger and sadness, but also a wave of hope. She wanted Susan to understand, to see beyond what society had taught her. John, watching the scene, felt inspired by Emily's courage. He remembered his own failings, how he had let fear paralyze him in critical moments. Now, witnessing that young woman's bravery, he realized he could not allow himself to be just a bystander. He needed to act and take a stand, not just for Emily, but for everyone who had suffered in silence. "This is about all of us," John said, his voice more resolute. "It's not just about Emily. It's about the change we need to see. We need to start dismantling these prejudices one step at a time." He looked at Susan, hoping she could see the truth in his words. The tension in the air was thick, but there was a new energy beginning to form. Michael, hearing John's determination, felt that things were changing. The conversation that had begun with confrontation was now transforming into a dialogue, a space where the truth could be spoken and heard. Susan took a deep breath, trying to gather her thoughts. "I want to understand, I really do," she said, her voice a bit stronger. "But how can we change? What can I do to help?" Her question was a sign that her defensiveness was dissipating, and the acknowledgement of her shortcomings was beginning to open space for reflection. Emily, encouraged by Susan's change of attitude, decided it was time to share her experience. "We can start by listening more. Not just hearing, but really listening. This is essential for us to understand what each of us goes through." Michael nodded, encouraging his daughter to continue. He knew this was a pivotal moment, and we can also support each other. Change doesn't happen overnight, but if we are together, we can create an environment where everyone feels respected and valued. As the conversation progressed, the walls that separated the four began to crumble. They were uniting around a common cause, and the positive energy was growing. Susan, now more open and vulnerable, began to share her own insecurities, her struggles to fit into a world that often judged her. "I also feel pressure to be perfect," she confessed, her voice choked. "Sometimes I care more about what others think than about what is right. I don't want to be like this. I want to be a better person, a better colleague." Susan's sincerity brought a new level of connection to the group. Emily saw that beyond appearances, there was someone who also struggled, and it made her feel that change was possible. Each person there was facing their own battles, and together they could find a way to overcome the barriers that divided them. As the conversation continued, the tension that had previously dominated the space began to dissipate. Understanding and empathy started to fill the room. The journey was far from over, but in that moment they all felt they had taken an important step. The light of hope shone brighter, and the future, which once seemed bleak, now revealed itself full of possibilities. It was a new beginning, and each of them was ready to face the challenges that lay ahead together. The following weeks after that day in the store were filled with changes for Emily. The courage she had shown spread like wildfire. At school, classmates began to look at her differently. She was no longer just the girl who stood out. She became a voice, a symbol of courage and change. But this new position also brought challenges. Emily faced curious and sometimes hostile glances. Some people admired her, while others saw her as a threat to the status quo. She realized that although she had managed to open a dialogue, there was still much work to be done. The conversations that arose were often uncomfortable, and some felt uneasy with the new understanding that she and her friends were trying to promote. One afternoon, while walking home, Emily felt the weight of the pressure on her shoulders. The sun was beginning to set, tinting the sky with shades of orange and pink, but the beauty of the scene couldn't dissipate the cloud hanging over her mind. The words of her friends encouraged her, but the voices of doubt were also present. What if this changes nothing? What if I end up alone in this fight? These thoughts accompanied her, creating a whirlwind of emotions. At home, her mother noticed that something was bothering her. "Are you okay, dear?" she asked, with a worried look. Emily hesitated before responding, but decided she needed to share. She talked about the pressures of school, the expectations she felt, and the fear of not being enough. Her mother listened attentively, and the empathy in her gaze made Emily feel a little lighter. "You don't have to carry this weight alone, Emily," her mother said with an encouraging smile. "You are much stronger than you think, but you are also human. It's normal to feel worried. What matters is that you continue to be true to yourself." Those words penetrated deep into Emily's heart. She realized she needed to find a balance between her fight and her emotional well-being. She couldn't save the world alone. She needed support, and that was perfectly acceptable. So she decided to open up to her friends about how she felt. During a gathering at John's house, Emily shared her insecurities. "Sometimes I feel like I'm fighting a battle alone. It's hard," she confessed, looking at the ground. "I want to make a difference, but I'm afraid nothing will change." John and Susan exchanged understanding glances. Susan, now more confident in her new attitude, spoke up. "I understand what you're going through, Emily. I've felt that way too, but you are not alone. We are all in this together." Susan's words brought relief to Emily. She realized she had formed a supportive group, and that was crucial for her journey. Together, they discussed ways to continue spreading the message they wanted to share. They created a small study and meeting group where they could talk about diversity and inclusion, not only in school, but in their communities. However, new obstacles began to emerge. Some people at school openly opposed what they were trying to do. Negative comments and hostile attitudes started to appear. Emily found herself facing not only resistance, but also the frustration of seeing classmates who didn't want to listen or understand. Those moments were painful, and the young girl felt that at times her courage wavered. Once, during a break at school, a group of students started mocking her and her friends. Emily felt her heart race. What she had feared was coming true, but instead of backing down, she took a deep breath and decided to face the situation. "This is not acceptable," she said, with a voice that surprised even herself. "We are all here to learn and grow, and that includes respecting each other." The reaction from others was mixed. Some began to applaud while others remained silent. What Emily didn't know was that that small act of bravery would make her an even greater example for those around her. She began to realize she couldn't please everyone, but that her truth and actions were making a difference. When she got home that night, tired but satisfied, she sat at the kitchen table with her mother. "Today was hard," she admitted, "but at the same time, I feel like I'm on the right path." Emily's mother smiled with a sparkle in her eyes. That's how you grow, dear. Each step, each challenge is an opportunity to become stronger and wiser. Keep fighting, but remember to take care of yourself too. Emily felt a new sense of determination. Although challenges were still present, she knew she was not alone. Change was a process, and each day brought a new chance to learn, grow, and inspire others. She was ready to continue her journey with courage and determination, even in the face of adversity. Emily continued her journey, determined to face the challenges that arose in her path. Each day she felt stronger, even though the difficulties still weighed on her heart. At school, the resistance to her cause became more evident. Those hostile voices that once intimidated her began to transform into motivation. She realized that adversity could be an ally, not an enemy. With the support of her friends, Emily decided she wouldn't let herself be shaken. Together, they created a project to promote inclusion and diversity. They organized weekly meetings where they discussed not only the issues they faced, but also how they could help others feel heard and respected. The idea was simple but powerful: to create a safe space where everyone could express their opinions without fear of retaliation. The first meeting was a milestone. The group gathered in a small auditorium at school, and to Emily's surprise, the number of participants exceeded her expectations. Students she had never met from different classes and interests showed up. Seeing them filled her heart with a wave of hope. She realized that the change she sought wasn't just within her, but in the community around her. During one of these meetings, Emily had the opportunity to hear stories from others who, like her, were facing their own battles. A girl who used to be the target of jokes because of her appearance shared how she began to accept and love herself. Another boy, who had felt excluded because of his preferences, spoke about how he found strength in art. Each account was a new lesson, and Emily began to realize that her experiences, no matter how difficult, could help others feel more confident. Over time, the supportive voices began to overshadow the criticisms. The students who had once bullied her now found themselves challenged to change their attitudes. It wasn't easy, and there were days when Emily doubted herself. But with each step, she remembered her mother's words, "You are stronger than you think." This phrase became a mantra for her. One day, however, an incident deeply shook her. During lunch, a group of students decided to cruelly mock her and her friends. Emily froze for a moment, the sharp words cutting through her spirit. But remembering everything she had learned, she took a deep breath and stood up. "This is not just a joke, it hurts," she said, her voice firm and clear. The silence that followed was deafening. Some students began to applaud, while others seemed embarrassed. That moment was a turning point. Emily realized she was not alone in her struggle. The support from friends and the solidarity of unexpected classmates helped her find a new perspective. She understood that true victory was not in eliminating opposition, but in transforming hearts and minds, even if slowly. This epiphany brought significant growth to Emily. She started to understand that success would not be measured solely by everyone's acceptance, but by her ability to make a difference in the lives of a few. The fight for inclusion and respect became a greater purpose, something she was willing to stand up for, regardless of obstacles. Over time, the group they created became a source of support and friendship. The bonds formed there were deeper than she could have imagined. Each of them brought their own experiences and challenges, and together they became a refuge where they could be authentic. Friendships began to blossom, and their unity strengthened them. Emily learned to apply the lessons she had absorbed throughout her journey. She understood that vulnerability was not weakness, but a form of strength. By sharing her insecurities, she allowed others to open up as well. This exchange of experiences created a space of empathy and understanding where everyone could grow together. Weeks turned into months, and each challenge faced became an opportunity for overcoming. Emily reflected on her journey and realized that the struggle was not just hers, but belonged to all who wanted a fairer and more welcoming world. Her worldview had changed. She began to see the beauty in differences and the importance of every voice, including her own. Thus, with renewed courage and a heart full of love and determination, Emily continued her journey. She knew that adversities would always be present, but now she faced them as part of the process. With each step, she became not only an advocate for change, but also a source of inspiration for those around her, showing that together they could transform the world around them. Emily was at a critical point in her journey. After months of fighting for inclusion and respect at school, She found herself facing a challenge that would test her like never before. During a group meeting, a student known for his hostile demeanor interrupted the discussion. He stood up and began to mock Emily and her friends, ridiculing their ideas and the very cause they were defending. The environment, which had once been safe and welcoming, quickly became tense. The student's words cut through the air like sharp knives. Emily felt her heart race and anxiety took over her. She was about to silence herself, to hide behind a forced smile, but an inner voice stopped her. She remembered everything she had been through, the voices that supported her, the stories that had been shared. It was time to face her greatest fear, being belittled by those who did not understand her struggle. She took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This is not just a joke. It is the reality for many of us here," she said, her voice trembling at first, but soon stabilizing. The silence that followed was heavy. Emily saw the faces of her classmates, some with supportive looks, others with expressions of discomfort. It was the moment she needed. The student stared at her, clearly surprised by her response. "And what are you going to do about it?" "No one cares about what you think," he retorted with a mocking smile. This provocation could have shattered Emily's confidence, but instead, it ignited a flame within her. "I care," she replied firmly, "and more importantly, we care. This space that we have created is a reflection of who we are and what we want. We will not let ourselves be shaken by those who do not understand the importance of respecting others." Emily's words echoed throughout the auditorium. She saw some students nodding in agreement, acknowledging the truth she was expressing. The group of friends accompanying her rallied in support, forming a protective shield around her. It was a moment of unity, where collective strength began to manifest. The hostile student, realizing that his tactic was not working, hesitated. He wanted to continue, but the energy in the room had shifted. Other students began to stand up, sharing their experience. Each story told was an addition to what Emily had initiated. The atmosphere, once heavy, now pulsed with empathy and solidarity. The climax of that day was not just about Emily facing her fear, but about the community coming together for a greater cause. What started as a response to provocations transformed into a movement. The group became a collective voice, demonstrating that change was possible. Emily realized that true strength was not only in her individual courage, but in the unity of everyone present. When the meeting ended, the atmosphere was different. The faces that had once been skeptical now showed interest and curiosity. The hostile student left without looking back, but Emily didn't mind. What mattered was that, for the first time, she felt truly supported. Her friends surrounded her in a hug, and she felt the strength of the friendship that had grown over the months. Reflecting on what had happened, Emily realized she had learned a valuable lesson. The fight for inclusion was not just about defeating opponents, but about creating a space where every voice was heard. It was about transforming adversity into alliance and fear into courage. She understood that each step she took, each challenge she faced, contributed to a more welcoming future. Emily's journey was not over. In fact, it was just beginning. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but now she was equipped with the knowledge that true transformation comes from love, solidarity, and empathy. What she had found was not just a school project, but a purpose in life. And so, with a renewed heart and unwavering determination, Emily moved forward, ready to face whatever came her way, knowing she was not alone. She had learned the importance of standing up, not just for herself, but for all those who sought to be heard and respected. And that, she knew, was the true victory. After the meeting, the atmosphere at school began to change, subtly but significantly. Emily felt a mix of relief and euphoria. Around her, classmates chatted animatedly, sharing their own experiences and coming together around the cause she had championed. It was as if an invisible barrier had been broken, and the voices that had once been muffled now echoed strongly. In the following days, Emily noticed more students approaching her. Many congratulated her for the courage she had shown during the meeting. A group of girls who had previously not interacted much with her became close, offering support and friendship. They often gathered during breaks to discuss ideas about inclusion and respect, and Emily felt part of something bigger. On the other hand, the hostile student seemed to have isolated himself. Emily noticed that he no longer participated in group conversations and appeared more distant. She felt a pang of sadness for him, knowing that the words she had spoken were not just for him but for everyone who felt the same way. It was sad to think that instead of listening, he had chosen to withdraw. One afternoon, while walking through the hallways, Emily encountered one of the teachers who had attended the meeting. He greeted her with a smile and said, "Emily, what you did was inspiring. You showed everyone that it is important to stand up for yourself and that empathy can change the environment around us." These words touched Emily's heart. She had never imagined that her courage could impact not just her peers, but also the adults around her. At home, she spoke with her mother about everything that had happened. "You know, Mom," Emily said, her eyes shining, "I felt like I accomplished something important. It wasn't just about me, it was about all of us." Her mother listened attentively, and her eyes filled with pride. "You are a leader, Emily, and leaders inspire change. I am so proud of you for standing up and using your voice." The conversation with her mother helped Emily reflect on what had truly changed. It was not just how people viewed her, but her own perception of herself. She felt stronger, more confident, and that encouraged her to continue her fight for inclusion. As the weeks went by, the group that formed around Emily began planning events and activities to promote respect and empathy at school. They organized lectures, workshops, and even an awareness campaign. Each time Emily spoke in public, she felt the support of her friends and peers around her, motivating her to go further. At one of these events, Emily had the opportunity to speak again. She realized that the voice she used now was different. It was firmer, clearer, and full of passion. "We are here to show that each of us has value, that everyone deserves to be heard and respected, regardless of our differences," she said as the audience applauded. The emotional impact of everything that had happened was palpable. Emily felt she had created a space where everyone could express themselves. This not only improved the atmosphere at the school, but also helped many students feel more comfortable sharing their stories. It was a domino effect of courage and solidarity. One day, while walking down the hallway, the hostile student approached. Emily tensed up, but he seemed different. "Hi, Emily," he started with a hesitant voice. "I wanted to apologize. What you said at the meeting made me reflect. I shouldn't have acted that way." For Emily, hearing this was a moment of great significance. She realized that even those who seemed most opposed could change. "I appreciate your honesty. We all have something to learn," she replied with a smile. Emily's journey was far from over, but now she knew that every step counted. With each challenge came a new opportunity to grow and help others, and more importantly, she understood that true strength lay in unity and empathy. The fight for inclusion was ongoing, but with each voice that rose alongside hers, the hope for a more welcoming future became increasingly real. Over time, the school transformed into a space of change and growth. Emily observed how her initially small actions triggered a wave of change that benefited everyone around her. She remembered her insecurities and the fear she felt before the meeting, but now, looking back, she realized how far she had come. With every new conversation and every new friend who joined her cause, she felt more confident and fulfilled. The group she formed was not just a group, it was a community. They met frequently, planning events that promoted inclusion and respect. Emily became a reference for many, and her once timid voice now resonated with strength. When she spoke, she not only defended her ideals, but also inspired others to stand up and speak for themselves. It was rewarding to see how fear and insecurity were being replaced by courage and empathy. The former classmate who had been hostile now approached frequently. At first, Emily hesitated, but soon realized he was genuinely interested in changing. He began participating in activities, offering ideas, and even helping to organize events. Their friendship, which once seemed impossible, blossomed. Emily learned that true transformation can happen when people are given a second chance. However, Emily, with each step, she faced criticism and resistance, especially from some who were still trapped in old habits of exclusion. But instead of allowing herself to be discouraged, Emily used these experiences as fuel for her purpose. Every negative word became an opportunity to show that change was possible and that everyone could make a difference. One day, during a presentation at a school assembly, Emily finally had the chance to speak about the importance of empathy. With her heart racing, she looked out at the crowd and felt she was there not just to share her ideas, but to represent all those who did not have a voice. She declared that change begins within each of us. If we want a more welcoming environment, we need to be the first to act. After the presentation, many students approached her to thank her. It felt as if a new era was beginning at the school, where inclusion and friendship were celebrated. Emily felt a wave of gratitude, not only for her achievements, but for the community she had helped to create. She realized that, in some way, the true victory was not just in changing others' attitudes, but in cultivating a space where everyone felt valued. Reflecting on her journey, Emily understood that true success was not in individual accomplishments, but in the ability to unite people around a common purpose. The friendships she developed with her peers, including those who had once been hostile, transformed her worldview. She learned that by opening up to dialogue and understanding, everyone could grow together. The school environment was more vibrant, and Emily felt that the fight for inclusion was just beginning. She wished for all students to feel safe and valued, and was determined to continue her mission. In this moment of reflection, Emily invited everyone to join her. Let's continue this journey together. Share your stories, your experiences. Every voice matters, and together we can create a space where everyone feels welcome. She knew that by coming together, they could achieve even more. It was time to act, to turn words into actions. The future was in their hands, and the change they desired was just the beginning. And so she asked everyone to leave a comment, share their stories, and subscribe to the channel, so that together they could spread this message of inclusion and empathy. After all, each interaction helped bring more stories and experiences that could inspire even more people to stand up and fight for a better world. We have reached the end of this moving story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Right now, there's a playlist of videos on your screen. If you want to continue watching these touching stories, just click on it and you'll start watching. And now, tell us in the comments which city you are watching from, and leave your like to support our work. Now, a sincere question. Do you agree with what happened in the story? We want to know your opinion. Until the next video.